Hey everybody, welcome back. We're going to finish up with the cerebral hemisphere and then we're going to get into the diencephalon and brainstem, okay? So we talked about the parts of the cerebral hemisphere. Well, the cerebrum is your consciousness. That's the area of consciousness, but it's connected to all other regions of the CNS by different fiber tracts. So the major tract that connects the right and left hemisphere I mentioned before was the corpus callosum. It is a very large tract and it is known as a commissure tract. If you have tracts that connect regions within the same hemisphere, those are called association tracts. And then a projection tract connects the cerebrum with other regions of the CNS. And let me show you what that looks like. There we go. So here's your commissure tract right here, which is that corpus callosum connecting the right and left hemisphere. These are association tracts, and then these tracts here would be called projection tracts, okay? Within the white matter of the cerebrum, where all those tracts are located, we have small regions buried called the basal nuclei. Basal nuclei are important in helping regulate voluntary activities, motor activities, and modifying information. So let's go to the next region called the diencephalon. The diencephalon sits on the brainstem and it is deep to the cerebrum. It contains the thalamus, hypothalamus, and the epithalamus. So here you can see the hypothalamus right here. The thalamus is right basically above the hypothalamus. So you can see the thalamus, hypothalamus, and then back here is where the epithalamus is located. Okay. The diencephalon encloses the third ventricle. So the ventricles of the brain are where cerebrospinal fluid is produced and moved around. The thalamus itself is a relay station for sensory impulses. It takes information from the environment and it sends it to the proper area of the cerebral cortex for interpretation. So if you look at this picture, here you have that thalamus, and information is going to move to the proper regions depending on what information is coming in. Is it something that we have to make a judgment call for? Is it something we are supposed to be feeling, or are we supposed to be moving? This information comes from an area, so a lot of this information comes from an area called the reticular formation in the brainstem. The reticular formation helps to take in those impulses and send them to the proper area. So anything that we're supposed to be aware of goes to that thalamus. The hypothalamus, very important region of the brain. So I guess all regions are really important, but the hypothalamus is the region of the brain that regulates a lot of our basic homeostatic mechanisms like body temperature, water balance, regulates metabolism, regulates hunger, thirst, which thirst would be part of water balance, I guess. The hypothalamus is the house for the limbic system. So limbic system is our emotional center. It regulates the pituitary gland. So it is the master of our endocrine system. So the epithalamus is posterior the thalamus, yeah, the posterior aspect of the thalamus. And it helps in forming the third ventricle. It houses the pineal gland, which is an endocrine gland, and includes the choroid plexus. Choroid plexus is the region of the brain that produces cerebrospinal fluid. So the next region is called the brainstem. The brainstem contains the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. So you have the midbrain back here. You have the pons right here, and then you have the medulla, and then the spinal cord, okay? So the midbrain contains the cerebral aqueducts that connect the third and fourth ventricles. It has cerebral peduncles that take in and send ascending impulses to the thalamus, and takes descending impulses and sends them away towards the spinal cord and out. And then it has the corpora quadrigemina, which are areas for visual and auditory reflexes. And so again, here you see this midbrain area. So this is that fourth ventricle. This region here is called the cerebral peduncle. And then back here we have the corpora quadrigemina. Okay. The pons is mainly functions in helping control breathing. So it is a very important region to help with breathing, but it is not what stimulates breathing. It just controls breathing. So the pons is this large fiber tract right here. And then we go to the medulla, which is actually where breathing control occurs. So the medulla is the region that houses breathing control centers, heart rate, blood pressure, as well as swallowing, vomiting. And so when impulses for breathing come in, the control centers in the medulla, but the pons will send signals to increase or decrease the breathing rate depending on what type of information the pons is getting. And then we have this reticular formation, which I mentioned earlier. Reticular formation filters information about filters incoming sensory information. And so it's going to send that information to the thalamus for us to have conscious awareness, or it might send it to other areas depending on what information is coming in from the peripheral nervous system. It also helps in maintaining consciousness and awake and sleep cycles. So here's that peripheral or that reticular formation. Takes in information from the spinal cord and from other areas, and then it will determine where the information has to go. So if the information needs to be we need to be consciously aware of, it's going to move up here into that thalamus. But if it doesn't, then it might move somewhere else, like coordination center or something. The next portion of the brain is the cerebellum. Cerebellum is often thought of as the mini brain because it looks kind of like the cerebrum, the back of the cerebrum, but it's just a tinier structure. It has two hemispheres as well. The outer region is gray, the inner region is white, and its major job is controlling balance and memories of coordination skills. So things like being able to ride a bike, you don't forget, that's stored in that cerebellum. So here's your cerebellum, and you can see the white matter, and then you can see the outside is the gray matter. So at this point, you should be able to tell us or tell me different parts of the brain and the functions of each brain region. I'm going to stop in this video and then we'll start the protections of the brain in the next video. Bye.